Oh, that's flowing well. Look at that. This is looking really pretty. I love the pattern. Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my Fluid Art channel and thank you so much for stopping by. Today I'm doing a pendulum pour, which I was going to have at the end of my video on how to mix paints for a pendulum pour, but that video was getting too long, so I decided to split it into two shorter videos. The basic thing with a pendulum pour is you have a cup or a bottle or something hanging on the end of a string, and you swirl it around and it makes this cool oval pattern. And as it slows down, the lines kind of overlap and the circle gets smaller, and it just makes this really intricate, beautiful pattern. So I'm making a patriotic red, white, and blue pendulum pour with metallic red, metallic blue, and metallic white paints. If you want to see how I mix those for this pour, you can click the link that's in the video description. But let's make a painting! Time for the pendulum part. I have a 16 by 20 inch canvas that I have spray painted navy blue because I'm doing a nice American patriotic red, white, and blue pour, and I wanted something that was a little bit different than the metallic blue here, but also not just plain white. So this is the bottle that I use for my pendulum pours. Whoops. I think it's like a 2-ounce bottle that I got. I forget where I got it. It was either dickblick.com. I think that was it. There were like 6 of them in a pack, and they came with different tips that you could cut to a customizable size. So I have 2 here. This one's quite small. This is the one that I like to use, but this mixture's a little bit too thick, so I use the slightly thicker one, but it's like a 1 millimeter hole versus a 2 millimeter hole. So it's still quite small. It's, you know, compared to like this squeeze bottle, it's still smaller, though not by much. So you'll just have to figure out your own, you know, what do you have and how thin do you have to make your paints in order to let them flow out of the nozzle that you want. Anyway, my bottle, I just cut the bottom off of it, attached a couple paper clips, and taped some rocks around the side, which looks really like do-it-yourself because that's what it is. The point of the rocks is they make sure that the bottle, even when it doesn't have much paint in it, it still is heavy enough to continue its arc. Because you want your cup or your bottle to continue flowing even when there's not a lot of paint in it. But also, having it be a bottle instead of a cup means that all the paint is pushing down on one spot, which means there's a lot less paint wastage. You can, your paint goes a lot further when it's in a bottle versus in a cup. So that's why I use this. I'm just using a piece of yarn with a paper clip attached. Yarn is twisted, which means as you send it out, it is going to spin, which I kind of like. If you don't want the spin, then use maybe a braided string or something that doesn't twist like yarn. But this is my bottle. And I'm just going to go ahead and start. I'm not going to give lots of details about how I'm putting it on. If you want to know kind of the thought process behind a pendulum pour, you can watch some of my other ones. But that's that. This is this. There's my colors. Let's make a painting. All right, this is looking really pretty. I love the pattern. This is a little bit more drippy than I was expecting, which I think just means it wasn't flowing out of the bottle quite as well as I wanted it to. So before I do the other colors, I'm going to thin them with a little bit more water to get them flowing just a little bit better, and then layer them on top of this. I'm tapping my cup here on the table to help bring some of the air bubbles up to the top of the cup and pop them. Because this is a fresh mixed paint, there's going to be air bubbles, and the air bubbles could also affect the flow. It's possible that some of these drips are by air bubbles, not because the paint is too thick. But regardless, I've thinned down my paints a little bit. I've rinsed out my bottle. So now I'm going to do the white. But I'll adjust my canvas to a slightly different location just so that it'll go out in a different pattern. No, that's not... Did you see how that was, it was flowing but not really easily? What that means is it needs to be a little bit thinner. So even though I thought I had it right, I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. This is why pendulum pours are tricky, because you can, you can think you have it right, but then just based on the size of your bottle, it won't work quite right. Okay, that looks great coming off of here. So I'm going to use this, and this is what I'll use, whether it flows perfectly or not. But I think this will work a bit better. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. I actually quite like those little broken streaks. It's not what I was going for, but I like them. I am going to thin my red paint down a little bit more, because I really want to be able to get that nice, unbroken flow. One other thing is that these are metallic paints. When I did this before, it was with non-metallic paints, and it could be that the metallics are, just a slightly different, that they behave different, and their viscosity and, the way they behave is different. They might not flow quite as thinly as a regular paint would. So I'll just mix this one a little bit thinner and try to get it in some beautiful clean lines for our last one. All right, time for the red. I hope it's not too thin. I'm looking at this white here and seeing it drip down the sides, and it looks thinner than the last paint that I used. So it may be the metallic coming into play. The metallics don't flow out of a pendulum quite as well as a different one would. But let's give it a go. I think I'm going to start this way and I'll try to make it a little bit skinnier. Instead of going around quite in so round a pattern, I'm going to try doing it just a little bit more straight. Oh, that's flowing well. Look at that. So this one's flowing perfectly. Nice to see that happen, even though I don't mind the broken up streams from the other two. So for this one, we can see that it's getting those smaller circles, which is always really fun to get. Hopefully there's enough paint still in the bottle that it'll continue to go into the middle nicely. When it starts turning to drips, that's when I have to start, or that's when I have to grab it. All right, cool. So that is the problem with the small bottle, because once it gets low enough, then there isn't enough weight of the paint pushing down and it starts to come out as drips. But that's quite cool. All right, let me give you a close-up. Okay, here we are. This is really cool. So obviously the the overlapping layers. The red was the most successful in terms of coming out in really neat lines. The white and the blue was a cool mix of lines and droplets and just kind of broken lines. Like that is a really interesting pattern. So it looks a lot like fireworks, which is perfect for a 4th of July kind of painting. So I'm looking at the red here, and I kind of wish that I had stopped it earlier, because it does kind of cover up the middle of that painting. But I wanted to show you how it looked as those rings got tighter and tighter in the middle, which is one of the coolest parts about a pendulum pour. Now, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of the definition in that because I had to thin the paint down so much. So you still get the shape, just not quite the really intricate layering of that. But still, I mean, look at that. Look how pretty those fanning layers of color are. And this is going to be super sparkly when it's dry, so I will show you that next. Okay, it's dry. The nice thing about pendulum pours is they dry really fast. And you can see how shimmery this one is. So I do think that the metallic paints gave me a little bit of trouble with, flowing out of the bottle. They didn't want to flow quite as well as a regular acrylic would. But the nice thing is you get all this shimmer. So I think it was worth it. I love this part where all the lines are crisscrossing. It's beautiful. So I do wish that I had stopped the red before it got quite so solid in the middle. I think leaving it a little bit more open would have made the whole thing feel more balanced, but I still like it a lot. And I like the broken lines, I like the drips, I like the solid. So I will be doing more pendulum pours in the future. Thank you guys for joining me for this patriotic pendulum pour. I hope it inspired you to try something new. Let me know down in the comments, have you done pendulum pours before and how did they turn out for you? I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys!